Now, please welcome to the stage our Deseret Management Corporation sponsored speaker, Chris Lee, President of Deseret Digital Media. Chris is here to talk about the importance of building strong business relationships.
I like this right here. Right here.
Thank you. So I'm here to talk about global relationships, and I know that today is all about building relationships to grow globally. I want to take 10 seconds of my time to have you look around next to you and shake a hand you haven't shaken before. Quickly. 10 seconds. Shake a hand you have not shaken before. Someone you have not met before. I want you to say hello. Thank you. This is how global expansion begins, with a relationship. My name is Chris Lee. I'm the president of Deseret Digital Media, and with particular focus on our global initiatives. One of our advisors is Clayton Christensen. And Clayton talks a lot about disruption in media. But a few years ago, he wrote a book called How Do You Measure Your Life? And this was his quote: "Intimate, loving, and enduring relationships with our family and close friends will be among the sources of the deepest joy in our lives." This sentiment, as it turns out, it was the impetus for the creation of a set of products at Deseret Digital Media that we launched just a few years ago, called Family Share. It's a global platform reaching families. I'm just going to give you a few of the data points of this product that we have launched. We have more than 125 million Facebook followers with 200 million monthly viewers and more than 3 billion impressions of our content across the world. As many of you know, Facebook has more than 1.7 billion monthly active users. Of those users, Family Share has a large percentage of those users that we reach every month. In Canada and the US, 8 to 16%. In Mexico, 39% of Facebook users every month see content from Family Share. In South America, those numbers are even higher. 37% in Colombia, 30% in Brazil, 36% in Argentina, and 33% in Peru. In the UK, 14%, 23% in both Portugal and Spain. And in emerging markets in Southeast Asia, those numbers are very small, 3% of India. But India, you might not know, is the largest English-speaking country in the world and is a rapidly growing market for Facebook. 4% in Indonesia and 19% in the Philippines. These reach numbers have been really astounding for us to watch as we've grown these markets around the world from here in Salt Lake City. We have thousands of writers who produce content for us in 10 different countries. So the content we're producing is localized for those markets around the world. As we have built this Facebook audience, we have realized that there is incredible data inside of Facebook that interacts with our content. And it has allowed us to see connections across the world of categories of interest of these users, of this audience. When you're dealing with an audience as large as Facebook with 1.7 billion users, or across the web with more than 2.5 billion users worldwide, you see the potential for reaching incredible numbers of people and to gather data from that effort. This, for us, has been the first step in growing internationally, is to understand that data. In particular, as we've looked at our audience across the world, we've found certain categories of interests of these users. In particular, we've noticed that they are very interested in travel. Among many other groups, the U.S. Hispanic population that we reach has great interest in traveling, in particular, back to lands that their ancestors come from, Mexico and Latin America. That has allowed us to create a partnership with Aeromexico. We have similar relationships with Deseret in Mexico as a tourist destination for users in both the US and in Mexico and Latin America. We've also seen an incredible interest in family entertainment as a category, again, gathered from the data that we're able to see from Facebook. Genius Water, which is actually a Utah-based company delivering Genius Agua in Mexico, and Kellogg's Mexico, the category of health and wellness, in particular food for families, is a big topic that we see very strong interest from our Facebook audience. So because of those connections that we see, that data that we see inside of Facebook, it's allowed us to build strong relationships with partners in Latin America. And because we have built those relationships with these partners, and that local publishers across the world have seen that success, we've had an opportunity to begin syndicating content to Latin American syndication partners. In Mexico, the Vanguardia Group. In Honduras, the Grupo OPSA. In El Salvador, El Diario de Hoy. In Nicaragua, La Prensa. And Colombia.com and Bolivia.com are now partners with us in we create content for those markets around the world. And they do that because they see the success that we've had in reaching those communities through Facebook. Now, how did we develop these relationships? This happened over the course of the last several years. About 3 years ago, my colleague Matt Sanders was invited to participate in the Inter-American Press Association, a group that protects press freedom around the world and represents news organizations and media properties in Latin America. Matt served as an advisor to this group and then became a member of their board, and this just 2 weeks ago, was elected to be the president of the board of the Inter-American Press Association. And as his first pronouncement as president, he's invited the IAPA to hold their annual convention in Salt Lake City, Utah next fall. So we will have here in Salt Lake representatives from media companies around Latin America here in Salt Lake City. This is an opportunity that everyone, regardless of what export you're involved with, is a great way to meet partners through industry organizations that represent those industries. I will point out, as our previous speaker mentioned, there are some significant transaction costs. This is a reality check for all of us in expanding internationally. This is not done without cost or without patience. We all have, as I pointed out, the need to localize our content, our products, to meet the needs of markets around the world. We're in our particular business of communication, in particular communication about relationships and families, these are universally held topics. However, there are very different and distinguishing characteristics of that content we produce for each of the countries around the world. And I could give you lots of examples of how content that is for Mexico, and it involves relationships in Mexico, would be very different than that same content that's produced in Brazil. I would also point out the time that this takes to build. If you are building a web business, for example, in the US, you launch a website, you get venture funding, and you can build that business relatively quickly. As partners are needed and transaction costs, again, as I mentioned, are important to recognize, the time it takes to build these businesses internationally is significantly longer. In particular, I'd point out with Latin America, the way that, the symbol that's used for a partnership is un abrazo. And many of you that work and have done work in Latin America know that hug, un abrazo, is that symbol of a real partnership. And un abrazo does not happen overnight. Creating a winning relationship jointly profitable for two or more partners takes time to develop. And the trust level that is needed in partnering across these borders is even larger than it is in the US. And of course, there are legal challenges, there are trade challenges in any of these markets. And what we've observed is that those relationships are much more easy to build and to monetize or develop revenue relationships in Mexico and some of the Central American countries, and much more difficult in some other countries. Finally, I'm going to return back to the point that I started. In the Harvard Business Review, the way that people manage their work relationships is closely linked to the way they manage their personal ones. And I would just point out that this market of Utah is a very unique one. We have the largest family sizes. We have the youngest age, average age in the country. And these factors make us uniquely aware of the opportunities and challenges of building family relationships. Those same principles apply in building our business relationships and in how we reach out across the world to build relationships of trade. Thank you very much for your time today.